Hello again, Struck. It is about time I do a deep dive into the Paragon boards for every class. This video is one such deep dive into the Paragon boards of the Rogue class. Each class has apparently 8 legendary Paragon boards with legendary nodes inside and one starting Paragon board. For the rogue, the 8 ones would be Eldritch Bounty, Tricks of the Trade, Cheap Shot, Deadly Ambush, Leyrana's Instinct, No Witnesses, Exploit Weakness, and Cunning Stratagem. Interesting names. We will dive into each of them one by one, obviously beginning with the starting Paragon. So I hope you enjoyed this video and find it informative. Buckle up, Struck, and let's go. So as mentioned, starting with the, starting Paragon board, I want to say some things before that though. First of all, each Paragon board, including the starting one, has a glyph socket, which means you get a total of 9 glyphs that you can maybe socket slot into those ones. But since you have around 200-ish Paragon points, you won't be, you would have to sacrifice some good yellow and blue nodes tiles if you want to get all glyphs. And most likely it won't be as feasible unless you have some amazing, nice legendary glyphs that you want to slot in. So in most cases, you probably would do 4 or 5 Paragon board glyphs and maybe take 4 or 5 Paragon board legendaries and then fill the rest with blue and yellows, as many of those as possible. So each one except the starting has a legendary node inside, and normally you would see such clusters of a yellow with 5 blue, except in the starting node where you have at the beginning yellow and 4 blue, yellow and 4 blue, and then yellow and 5 blue. So after we've said that, the rest of the nodes, as you can see, are just basic strength, dex, int, and willpower. There are blue versions of those that instead of +5 give you +7, and each node has on all four sides, it has a gate, attachment gate, and you have to put a point into the attachment gate on one board, such as the starting, and then on the other board. So the attachment gate does take a point, and since you have to attach one gate to another gate, that's 2 points that you put into +5 strength, +5 int, +5 willpower, +5 dex, which is not bad for a point. Now that we've said that, let's go through the stuff, starting from the bottom. First, we have resilience, which is resistance to all elements, maximum life, and then if you meet a requirement of strength and dex, more resistance to all elements. If you meet enough dex, more resistance to all elements, and if you meet enough strength, even more resistance to all elements. We have blue, resistance to all elements twice, and we have the maximum life twice. Then here we have prime, which gives you weapon damage. It seems to be flat, but I can't confirm that. It's hard to tell, but it seems to be flat because we don't see the percent added in the formula. And then it gives you a life percent. Then if you meet enough intelligence, you can double this weapon damage, I'm assuming, and you can even triple it if you meet enough willpower requirement. Here you have 2 times weapon damage in blue, and then you have 2 times maximum life percent in blue. Over here, you can find Wawless, which gives you armor, and it also gives you +10 dex. And another thing it does give you is armor if you meet a certain strength requirement. Then to help with that requirement, 2 times +7 strength. Now there's more armor, and more armor, 3 times in blue. Over there we have skillful, which gives you weapon damage, and it gives you 10 dexterity. And if you meet a certain intelligence requirement, even more, doubling that weapon damage bonus. There is intelligence, 2 times +7 to help with the requirement, and then there's 3 times more weapon damage in blue nearby. The first legendary Paragon board we will take a look at is the Eldritch Bounty Paragon. And this note here gives you the following bonus. When you attack with an imbued skill, you gain 20% resistance and 20% multiplicative increased damage for that imbuement's element for 6 seconds, which is very interesting. It will be very fun if you combine that with that legendary item, that unique item. That or there used to be a legendary aspect, but I think they promoted it to a unique that makes Rain of Arrows always be imbued with all three elements, all three imbuements. So you would benefit from the increased shadow, cold, and poison damage, and you would get 20% shadow, cold, and poison resistance for those 6 seconds every time you use the the skill, the Rain of Arrows skill. Now let's check the blue and the blue and yellow ones, starting from the top. Potent gives you imbued skill damage and dex. The imbued skill damage, as you can see, is added %, and you can double it if you have enough strength. And there's strength to help 2 times plus 7 nearby. Now you have imbued skill damage added % 3 times in blue nearby as well. Over here we have something called dosage, which gives you plus 10 dex, and it also gives you potion healing bonus. And if you have enough intelligence, you're doubling the potion healing bonus. There's 2 times plus 7 intelligence nearby to help with that. And there's also 3 times potion healing bonus in blue nearby. What we do have here is something that gives you added % non-physical damage and cooldown reduction to skill category. What skill category would that be? Most likely imbuement skills. This is just my guess. And you can get non-physical damage, that bonus non-physical damage increased if you meet a dex requirement. So you can double it, it seems. Over here, non-physical damage 3 times in blue. And then we have cooldown skill reduction to a category. And again, it seems to be imbuement because we see the skull, the snowflake, and the potion, the bulb or whatever, think the poison symbol. So definitely imbuement skill cooldown reduction here and here. Next up, Suffused Resilience. This one other classes also have it on their boards. A defensive note gives you damage taken over time reduction and resistance to all elements. And then if you have enough intelligence and willpower, it's giving you more damage taken over time reduction. If you have the same amount of willpower, even more. And if you have slightly less intelligence, even more damage over time reduction. Over there, resistance to all elements twice, and damage taken over time reduction 3 times in blue nearby. What we have here is called Restorative, another thing that other classes also have in their boards here and there. This gives you potion healing bonus and maximum life. And if you have enough willpower, more of that potion healing bonus. If you have enough intelligence, even more of it. So nearby you have 2 times maximum life in blue and 3 times potion healing bonus in blue. And over there we have Imbue, which gives you added % imbue skill damage and added % 1/3 of the imbue skill damage. So if the imbue skill damage would be 10%, this one would be 3.3. If the imbue skill percentage would be 9, this would be 3%, but 3 times less, but non-physical damage. Then you have bonus, which doubles the imbue skill damage if you meet a dex and strength requirement. Now over here we have non-physical damage once, twice, blue, added %, and then added % imbued skill damage 3 times nearby. The next Paragon board for the rogue is the Tricks of the Trade, which contains this note that gives the following bonuses. Your marksman skills grant your next cutthroat skill increased X% additive damage. Your cutthroat skills grant your next marksman skill X% increased damage. So it's for some sort of a build that's definitely using a lot of going back and forth between cutthroat and marksman skills. And it's interesting. It's interesting in what direction you're getting nudged by this legendary note. Over here we have Brawler, which gives you damage to close enemies and damage reduction from close enemies. It also can double the damage to close enemies bonus if you meet dex and strength requirements. To help with things, you have damage to close enemies even more 3 times nearby, and the reduction 2 times more nearby in blue. Here we have Shadow Resilience, which I've seen on the Necro as well. Shadow Resilience gives you Shadow Resistance percent and maximum life percent. And if you have enough willpower, more Shadow Resistance. If you have enough intelligence, even more Shadow Resistance. 3 times more Shadow Resistance nearby in blue, and 2 times more maximum life nearby in blue. What we have here is Lawless, which we already saw on the Rogue. It gives you plus 10 dex, and it also gives you armor. And if you have enough strength, it gives you even more armor. There's strength 2 times plus 7 nearby to help, and there's 3 times more armor nearby to help. What you do have nearby is damage to elites and plus 10 dex. This damage to elites is added percent. And you can double it if you have enough intelligence. Nearby, you can see 2 intelligence plus 7 notes and 3 times added percent damage to elites in blue. And keep in mind, bosses also count as elites, but elites obviously don't count as bosses. Nearby, we have something called Ranger, which gives you damage to distant enemies and damage reduction from distant enemies. And then what you do have is if you meet a dex and intelligence requirement, you get more damage to distant enemies, pretty much doubling the other bonus. You have damage reduction from distant enemies twice, and in blue, and 3 times damage to distant enemies in blue nearby. Over here we have Havoc, and Havoc gives you crit strike damage added percent, physical damage added. And then if you meet a certain dex requirement, it's doubling, it seems, that crit strike damage. And if you meet an intelligence requirement, it seems like it's tripling that crit strike damage bonus. Now you have physical damage added, and that's 2 times in blue, and then 3 times in blue, crit strike damage added percent nearby. And obviously each node has a glyph socket. Now what we have here is the cheap shot Paragon 3, and it seems very fun. Very fun cheap shot Paragon 3. This is what it does. You deal X multiplicative increased damage for each nearby enemy that is crowd controlled. So very good with that caltrops in the build, swallowing caltrops. And up to X%, pretty much. Now let's start from the top with the yellow and blues. Calculated gives you damage to crowd controlled enemies and armor. You can double the damage to crowd controlled enemies if you have enough dex, and triple it if you have enough intelligence. There's blue added armor nearby, and blue added percent damage to crowd controlled enemies 3 times nearby. The armor is twice, the damage is 3 times nearby. Over here we have Devious. I love the name of that one, which is added percent damage to crowd controlled enemies and 10 dex. And if you have enough int, you get more, you double that damage to crowd controlled enemies pretty much. And to help with that, there's 2 plus 7 int nodes nearby, as well as 3 blue damage to crowd controlled enemies added percent nodes. Over there we have Oppress. And Oppress gives you damage to crowd controlled enemies added percent and critical strike damage to crowd controlled enemies added percent. And then if you have enough willpower, the damage to crowd controlled enemies seems to be doubled. And if you have enough intelligence, it might even get tripled. Now, what we do have is crit strike damage to crowd controlled enemies twice added percent in blue and 3 times damage to crowd controlled enemies added percent in blue nearby. Over here we have wiles or wiles, let's say wiles, which gives you 15% dex and damage reduction from crowd controlled enemies. As well as if you meet a strength requirement, it's doubling that damage reduction from crowd controlled enemies. There is 2+7 strength nodes to help with that. And then you have damage reduction from crowd controlled enemies 3 times in blue nearby. Then we have something called Safeguard, which gives you damage reduction from elites added. It also there's also armor. Although the damage reduction from elites, it doesn't say whether it's added or not, but the armor is added. And then if you have enough willpower, the damage reduction from elites seems to be increased. Then if you have enough intelligence, further increased. If you have enough dex, even further increased. And if you have enough strength, even further increased. Now, what we have here is, as you can see, damage reduction from elites 3 times in blue nearby and 2 times added armor in blue nearby. And over here we have something called Spearhead, which gives you damage to healthy enemies. Healthy enemies are enemies over 80% HP. And there's armor added. Now, another bonus damage to healthy enemies if you have enough willpower, if you have enough intelligence, even more damage to healthy enemies. Nearby, we can see 2 times added armor in blue and 3 times added percent damage to healthy enemies in blue. Deadly Ambush is the name of the next Paragon board and legendary Paragon node, which gives you the following bonus. You deal X% additive increased critical strike damage to enemies affected by your trap skills. This can be combined very nicely with the previous cheap shot one, where you deal damage to crowd controlled enemies and caltrops, because caltrops is a trap and it also crowd controls enemies. So stacking this with the other one, just a match made in hell. Now, what we have here is Cunning. Cunning gives you +10 dex, and it also gives you damage reduction from enemies affected by your traps. You also have another extra increased damage reduction from enemies affected by your traps if you meet a strength requirement. And to help with the strength requirement, 2+7 nodes are nearby, as well as 3 blue damage reduction from trapped enemies. I'm gonna say trapped. When I say trapped, I mean affected by your traps. So 3 times in blue. Over here we have +10 dex. Engineering gives you +10 dex and added percent damage to trapped enemies affected by your traps. And you can double this damage bonus if you have enough intelligence. And there's intelligence 2 times +7 nearby to take to help with this requirement, as well as 3 times damage to trapped enemies nearby. Over here we have something called Poison Resilience, which gives you poison resistance and maximum life, and even more poison resistance if you meet a dexterity requirement, and even more if you meet a strength requirement. 3 times more poison resistance in blue, and 2 times more maximum life in blue nearby. On the other side, we have Spring Loaded, which gives you cooldown reduction to trap skills and another cooldown reduction to trap skills, pretty much doubling the bonus, I assume, if you meet an intelligence requirement. Nearby, you have, as you can see, 2 times cooldown reduction to trap skills and 3 times trap skill damage blue. Added percent for the skill damage, for the reduction, most likely added or multiplicative percent. Over here we have Slayer, which gives you added armor and also potion healing bonus. And if you have enough strength, it gives you more armor. If you have enough dex and willpower, even more armor. If you have enough strength and willpower, even more armor. If you have enough willpower and intelligence, even more armor. So if you want to be a beefcake, that definitely helps. Over here we have 2 times potion healing bonus magic in blue and 3 times added armor in blue nearby. Moving on to Trapper, which gives you added % trap skill damage, added % damage to trapped enemies. And by trapped I mean affected by your trap. They don't have to be in one place. Then bonus trap skill damage doubled if you meet the dex and intelligence requirement. As you can see, there is trap skill damage 3 times and again added % and then added % damage to trap affected enemies over here nearby in blue. Next up is the Leyrana's Instinct Paragon board, and there are some nice things about it. So the node gives you, the legendary node gives you, when inner sight's gauge becomes full, you gain X% added dodge chance for X seconds. Now nearby it there is a rare node called Suffused Resilience. We've already seen that. Gives you damage taken over time reduction, and it gives you resistance to all elements. And if you have enough intelligence and willpower, more damage taken over time reduction. If you have enough willpower, even more damage taken over time reduction. If you have enough intelligence, even more damage taken over time reduction. 2 times more damage to, not 2 times more resistance to all elements nearby in blue, and 3 times more nearby in blue damage taken over time reduction. Over there we have poison resilience, which we've already seen, poison resistance, maximum life bonuses, and then if you have enough dex, more poison resistance. If you have enough strength, even more poison resistance. There are 3 more poison resistance in blue nearby and 2 more maximum life nodes here in blue around it. Over there we have Nimbo. Nimbo gives you attack speed and it also gives you weapon damage. They seem to be % added attack speed and what most likely added weapon damage. Now you can increase the attack speed if you have enough dex, and if you have even more dex, you can increase it even further. Over there you have 2 nodes that give you added weapon damage, and then added % attack speed, 3 more nodes in blue around it. On this side we have something called Discerning, which gives you damage bonus after dodging and damage reduction after dodging. And then it also gives you damage to elite enemies. And again, bosses count as elites, but not all elites count as bosses, obviously. You can double the damage bonus after dodging if you meet a dex and intelligence requirement. Now there is damage to elites, added % twice in blue nearby, and dodge damage reduction, after dodging 3 times nearby in blue. Feint gives you damage bonus after dodging, and it also gives you damage reduction after dodging plus 10 dex as well. And you can double the damage bonus after dodging if you meet an intelligence requirement. To help with that requirement, there are 2 plus 7 intelligence right next to it. Around it, you can also find magic nodes, blue nodes that give you damage duration to the damage after dodging. So after dodging that damage bonus increase, you can increase the duration of that damage bonus with those nodes. Now what we have here is Tolerance, which gives you plus 10 dexterity, and it also gives you resistance to all elements, added %. And what you can do is you can double that resistance to all elements if you have a strength requirement met. Help with the strength requirement, they are giving us 2+7 strength nodes nearby. There's also 3 blue resistance to all elements nodes nearby, as well as the usual glyph. Next up, we have another legendary node, another Paragon board called No Witnesses. As the name suggests, it's about leaving no enemies to tell the tale. Your ultimate skills deal X% multiplicative increased damage and grant you X% increased damage for 20 seconds when cast, which is great if you have an ultimate such as Quone that lasts for X amount of time, and since the Quone does damage based on your damage, you'll be boosting that one as well. So definitely having ultimates that have a duration would be better than stuff like Rain of Arrows to use with this. Now that we've gone through that one, let's go bit by bit, starting from the top with the nodes. Cover, execute. Execute, again, my guess what execute here means is that one affix that gives you chance to execute enemies if they're under 10% HP left. And this also gives you added % attack speed, and you can get even more execute if you meet enough strength and dex requirement, even more if you meet an intelligence and dex requirement, even more if you meet a strength requirement, even more if you meet a willpower requirement, and even further if you have enough willpower and intelligence. So definitely can stack up that execute chance here. There's more attack speed, added % twice in blue, and 3 times more added execute in blue nearby to take. Recuperate gives you potion healing bonus, and it also gives you healing over time. And if you meet a willpower requirement, you get more potion healing bonus. If you meet strength, even more. If you meet intelligence requirement, even more. 3 times potion healing bonus nearby increase, and 2 times healing over time nearby increase. Ruin gives you damage to healthy enemies, added %, and that means enemies above 80% HP. It also gives you crit strike damage, added %. Now you can increase the damage to healthy enemies if you meet a dex requirement, and if you meet an intelligence requirement as well, you can increase it even further. Around it, you can see 2 times crit strike damage added % and 3 times damage to healthy enemies added % in blue. On the other side is fleeting, which gives you crowd control duration reduction. And it also gives you damage taken over time reduction. There are 2 nodes that give you damage taken over time reduction in blue. Added %, and there's also crowd control duration reduction 3 times around it in blue to take. Further down, we are moving on to training, which gives you 10 dex, and it also gives you maximum wife %. On top of that, you can increase that maximum wife, I'm assuming double it if you have enough strength. And to help with the strength requirement, nearby you can find a +7 strength node twice in blue. And there's also 3 times more maximum life nodes around it in blue. What we have here on the other side is called knowledge. And in this case, knowledge really is power. It gives you 10 intelligence, but it also gives you weapon damage added. If you have enough willpower, even more weapon damage, and if you have enough intelligence, even further increasing that weapon damage. And if you're struggling with the intelligence points, there's 2 times +7 nearby to take. In blue, as well as 3 times nearby weapon damage bonuses in blue to take. As well as the usual glyph socket every node, every Paragon board has. Next is the exploit weakness Paragon board, and the exploit weakness legendary node gives you whenever you deal damage to a vulnerable enemy, they take X additive, no, not additive, X multiplicative increased damage from you for 6 seconds up to a certain amount of multiplicative damage. Very good if you have things that goes vulnerable. So if you're building in such a way, definitely nice. And one of the capstones on the skill tree is a great synergy for that. Now, code resilience gives you code resistance, as the name might suggest, and maximum life. And you can increase the code resistance if you have enough intelligence, and even further if you have enough willpower. Nearby, 3 times more code resistance in blue and 2 times more maximum life in blue. Now, on the other side, we have Hunter Killer, which we've seen already in another Paragon board of the Rogue. This gives you damage added percent to elites, and as well as it also gives you movement speed for X amount of seconds, 0.15 seconds after killing an elite. And that skill duration seems to be increasing, I think, because it says move speed elite Q duration as an additional bonus. So we'll see how that goes. Then you can get even further damage to elites if you have enough dex, and even more damage to elites if you have even more dex. Nearby, we see damage to elites added percent 3 times in blue and 2 times this same movement speed bonus after killing an elite for a certain amount of seconds, and the option to increase the duration, probably for each elite cute or something like that, 2 times in blue nearby. On the other side, little below, you have unassailable. Unassailable gives you armor, and it also gives you damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. And if you have enough dex and willpower, you can apparently, it seems, double the damage reduction from vulnerable. And it seems like you can even triple it if you meet an intelligence and strength requirement as well. Nearby, you can find 2 added armor bonuses in blue to take, and 3 notes in blue nearby for damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. If we go further down, we would find Exploit, which gives you a vulnerable damage added percent and added percent damage to injured enemies. And injured enemies, if I'm not mistaken, is under 80% HP, or was it under 20% HP? I can't remember, but I think it was under 80% HP. Now, vulnerable damage, that vulnerable damage bonus added percent can be doubled if you have enough dex and intelligence. Nearby, you can find damage to injured enemies twice in blue, and then 3 times vulnerable damage added percent in blue nearby added. On the other side, you have Artifice, which gives you added percent vulnerable damage and 10 dex. You can double that vulnerable damage if you meet a strength requirement. And to help with the strength requirement, nearby you can find 2 times plus 7 blue notes on it. And then there's also 3 times vulnerable damage added percent blue around it to take. And then we have Dosage, which gives you 10 dex. And it also gives you potion healing bonus. And it can double that potion healing bonus if you meet the intelligence requirement. To help with that intelligence requirement, next to it you can find 2 plus 7 intelligence blue notes, as well as 3 blue potion healing bonus notes. Last but not least in any way is the Cunning Stratagem Paragon board and legendary note, which does the following. Your non-damage combo point bonuses are increased by 33.334% when you spend 3 combo points. Again, your non-damage combo point bonuses, not the damage ones, such as increased arrows and things like that. Increased arrows in a shot definitely being increased by 33% would be solid, and movement speed and attack speed and stuff like that. It might not be damage directly, but the attack speed will give you damage one way or another. So let's go from the top. Finisher gives you 10 dex. It also gives you core skills damage added percent. What else you can get is you can double this core skill damage if you meet an intelligence requirement. And to help with that intelligence requirement, there's 2 plus 7 intelligence notes around it nearby to take. There's also core skill damage bonuses in blue nearby to take 3 times. And if we go down this side, we find Wowlets, which we've already seen, that gives you 10 dex and extra armor. And if you have enough strength, doubling the armor. And to help with the strength requirement, there's 2+7 nodes nearby, and also 3 blue added armor nodes nearby if you want more. Now, Dominant is on the other side, and it gives you core skill damage. It also gives you basic skill damage. And you can double the core skill damage if you meet an intelligence and strength requirement. Now, what you can see here is 2 times basic skill damage added % and 3 times core skill damage added % in blue around it to further deepen your bonuses in that area. Now, what you have here is called Denial, and it gives you armor, and it also gives you resistance to all elements. And you can double the resistance to elements bonus apparently with enough dex. And if you have also enough strength, triple it, or you can just have one of those, obviously. Now, there's 2 more armor blue bonuses added and 3 more added % resistance bonuses blue around it if you want more. On the other side, we have fundamentals, which give you basic skill damage added % and weapon damage added. Now you can double the basic skill damage apparently if you have enough intelligence. And around it you can find 3 more blue basic skill damage added % bonuses and 2 more weapon damage added bonuses. And here at the bottom we have Slayer, which we've already seen. It's great. It gives you armor and it also gives you potion healing bonus. Which is different than the other Slayer we saw, if I'm not mistaken. So you can get even more armor if... I don't think this is supposed to be Slayer. Slayer is different. This seems to be a completely different thing. They probably messed up the name. I can tell you which one this is, maybe if I find it, but let's just read it. So this one gives you armor and potion healing bonus, and if you meet a certain requirement of strength, more armor, and even more armor if you have dex and willpower of a certain degree, and then strength and willpower of a certain degree for even more armor, and even more armor if you have enough willpower and intelligence. So if you want to be that beefcake, that's it. Next, even more armor 3 times blue nearby, and even more potion healing bonus 2 times blue nearby. To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer want to be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end. Struck up, keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.